Good evening, listeners, ladies and gentlemen. 23rd of March, Tuesday. You're here for another episode of the Tiger Town podcast with your hosts, Toby and Zac. A very chipper studio over here. How are you, Toby, this eve?
Oh, mate, chipper is an understatement. Chipper is an understatement. I think I went to bed on Saturday night singing 66 to 18.
Yeah, I woke up singing it, so happy days.
Happy days. Mate, how was that? Who expected that? Absolutely no one.
No, I think it was a bit of a shock
Performance.
to all and sundry, but, we keep talking about the fact that we have been building for quite some time now, so I guess it was a hell of a building,
Yeah,
but
definitely
all time,
capitulated
so...
to something, didn't it?
I tell you what, it was glorious, glorious to witness, and there's lots to obviously get into about the game. And geez, being on the end of the highest score, not only from West Tigers, but either of the foundation clubs, with both Wests and Balmain as well.
Yep.
So dating back to 1908, yeah, it's historic in every sense of the word, and I don't think we saw it coming. But how good! I'm not going to send that one back.
No. I think we'll file that one and try to figure out a way to watch it on a daily basis somehow. Maybe it's like a lullaby that we give ourselves before we fall asleep.
Well,
So
I'm thinking if we're looking at regenerating our intro, obviously '05 will always be glorious, but we might be able to have a temporary change of our intro at some point. And it's probably going to revolve around something to do with Luke Brooks, Jareen Buller, and Stafford Toa, I think.
I think that's probably, and maybe even throw Steph in there somewhere. I think
And the other 13 blokes as well, probably, to be honest.
look, we can't speak properly at the moment because we're still
No.
our voice boxes are still shattered from Saturday night. We
Yeah.
were very vocal, very happy, and yeah, it's hard to put into words if you really think about it, because our when we put the pot on last week, we were both quite confident we were going to win. We
Mm.
both thought we were in with a very good chance because, like you said, we've been building towards something. We may have had that loss to South the week prior, but we put up a hell of a performance for 75 minutes. Um, but yeah, just to have things unfold the way they did, definitely didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, all clubs get to experience it in one way or another, I think, eventually. But yeah, we definitely got ours on the weekend, and we made the most of it. Poor patrons in at the Central Hotel in the middle of Stanthorpe were probably had their ears ringing from us giving them a little bit.
Yeah,
A couple of schooners and a bourbon or two on my end, but all in good fun.
all in good fun. It was all good cheering, good jest. No, didn't seem to be annoying any Cowboy supporters because I didn't think there were any. So,
We would have found them if there was, though. No,
oh
we're good
yeah,
sport. We're good sports over here. After you're on the receiving end of, I guess, a lot of banter over the last however long, 10, 15 plus years, you
yep.
learn to become a bit of a good loser, I think, because you know what it's like to be on the reverse end.
Oh yeah, copped a fair bit of banter after the Roosters game last year, so it was nice to finally give it instead of take it. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Mate, on that note, it behoove us to mention the way that we went about our visionary bold predictions from last week. And I might just refresh the listeners' memories a little bit and maybe play back. Bear with us for a minute or two. We'll just play back a little audio as to what we envisioned happening on Saturday last week. We didn't nail everything, but listen closely, see if you can pick up on a bold prediction or two that came off. What you think's going to happen in the game? How do you see it playing out? We'll do that. We'll do our bold predictions. We'll wrap the show up.
Yeah. All right. So first bowl prediction, Tolly gets a try. Second,
I will note that one
yeah.
fell through.
Look,
How we score
geez,
11 tries and he doesn't. Goodness gracious, what's it going to take?
he still ran for over 150 meters. Come on, mate. Just
Is
make
that
those
all? Wow.
make two of those meters go over the white try line. What are you doing to yourself?
I think Steph was taking all the good crash balls.
I think he was.
Anyway, that one aside, we'll keep listening. Here we go.
bowl prediction is Buller breaks his duck.
Check.
And then how I see the game wrapping up, I think we're going to come out firing. It's
Check.
been a while since we've done that at Leichhardt. I think we'll have a point to prove because of last year.
Check.
Because that obviously was very, very, very much. Well, yeah, I'm not going to say it was cheating, but no one's going to sue me, so who cares? It was cheating.
Point.
But I think they'll come out firing with the point.
That's just your subjective opinion, though. You're allowed to have that.
That's right.
That's our disclaimer from last weekend's podcast.
I think we'll come out firing, and I think we'll go in ahead by 18 points at halftime, but I think we'll win by 12.
Oof. Oh, out of that, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it unfolded at the end of it. Win by 12, then we ended up winning by 48, if I remember.
Only 48.
Only
yeah,
48.
so you're only off by 36, but you know the halftime
Only off by
prediction.
6 tries. It's fine.
Yeah, that's all. That's all though.
Yeah.
And probably if you're going to be off by 6 tries, it's probably, I'd rather be on the 48 side than the negative 48 side. So
very true.
Not bad. I'll see how I went. Let's see how we go.
I reckon they'll come back. They'll win the second half, but we'll still win by 12.
They tried.
I
Definitely did not.
We might lead from the front as well. And they might come back within a try, and then we'll maybe get one late, or we'll hold on for a bit of a nail bite.
Wasn't a nail biter, but they did come back at us at one point.
It was a nail biter if you think about it, because at one point I kept reminding you that if we score one more try, we leapfrog the Dragons on for and against.
That's right. We had a game within a game in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a nail biter there. So
how was Dragons fans? They went on Friday from beating the Roosters, being ecstatic, breaking a 6-game losing streak. They won and they dropped to last.
Pretty funny.
Anyway, I digress. I carry on a little bit more of the predictions to go yet to see how we land here.
True Tigers fashion. Got a scoreline? 32-20.
Double it. You're close.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Penalty goal or 2 missed kicks? You know what? Wakem's actually kicking really well. I'm going to go penalty goal.
Hey.
No penalty goal, but 11 from 11. Well, Wakem kicked.
9 from no, he was 8 from 8.
Appy 2 from 2. Brooksy 1 from 1.
Jesus, I forgot how good of a kicker bloody Appy is, hey?
You were on fire, mate.
Mate.
It gets better. We continue on. At 24-16. Awful. I wasn't even half. I didn't even make half what we scored.
Horrible. You're the Nostradamus of the group.
Yeah, no missed kicks. No time to miss one from the sideline. Maybe hit the upright.
No upright hits, but no missed kicks. I got that bit.
I like it. I like that a lot. I've got Stafford toe a double.
That's my big claim to fame. I'll take that one. I do go on to recorrect it a little bit and sort of give a bit of detail, but the first one I did get right.
I'm liking Tyler in the centres at the moment, hey. I actually am. So am I. He's been playing the house down. Yeah. I can see him getting one on a break, so a long range one, and I can see him getting a little crash over or like a ricochet off a kick or something.
Little crash over. They're both pretty accurate.
So the first one, obviously, off Jarian Buller with the flick from about 50-odd out.
That was
the second. So yeah, that's what I meant. His second try, but the first prediction, and then the second one being the little inside little roll back from Buller, and then
it's pretty close to it. Was pretty close to a crash ball as well.
Mate, look, respectfully, I think we both did pretty well in the bold predictions department. I think we were due, but look, I wouldn't have cared based upon what happened on the weekend if we didn't get any of them.
No, God no. I would have been like, I'm happy to be wrong 100% of the time if that's how we play and that's the scoreline. So,
look, with a game that positive, we're breaking new ground for this show. And so it's going to be a very interesting podcast.
No, we both got smiles on our faces for once.
Yeah, I know. We've become the experts at finding, I guess, positives in how did Andy Dufresne put it in Shawshank Redemption? He had to climb through 500 yards of shit to taste freedom on the other side or something like that. That's the pod most weeks, let's be honest, at least in the last couple of years anyway, when we haven't been going too well.
Yeah, no, it's a fair analogy.
We're Andy Dufresne. Well, you're Andy Dufresne, I'm Red.
Yeah, I'll go with that. You've definitely got a red beard.
Lovely. That'll do me.
That'll do you. And we
So,
definitely climbed through 500 yards of shit and piss.
Yeah, it's lovely. Well, not the nicest way to describe the last few years, several years as a Tiger supporter, but it's probably a bit hard to argue in some ways, isn't it?
Look, it's I'm pretty certain we've used worse analogies. So
Most definitely. Well, we've turned a corner though. Grand final tickets obviously go on sale in a couple of weeks. We'll be making sure that we nab a couple. I'm considering even skipping it because it's going to be a whitewash our way, and maybe just going next year's.
Well, I was going to go the opposite, or not the opposite sort of feeling, but I was going to use the kids' university fund and actually get a box. So
yeah, nice. Okay. Well, in that case, I might have to be dragged on. I mean, we're going to win what 6 of the next 7 or something like that. I think we're projected to win now. So
yeah,
there'll be plenty of flags coming our way, plenty of rings. So we've got time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. I mean, it's hard to dispute the fact that a dynasty is coming, is it?
No, mate. I mean, is there anything that's more unequivocally true than that statement? I find it hard to believe. There was talk half the teams saw that performance on the weekend and actually handed their resignation in for the 2023 season so they can get early trip to Bali. I know that Bradman Best offered to do deals for a few people, but outside of that, it's going to be interesting. Hopefully we play the Cowboys in the grand final. That'd be interesting.
We've done that, beaten them already. Let's try something new. Let's go against Penrith. Let's go against Penrith and just flip off Ivan. That'll be better.
Folks, this is what happens when we're breaking new ground.
We don't know what to talk about.
we don't know what to talk about.
We don't know how to flow.
Right. We certainly do. But as we were saying, we've been good at picking out positives. Plenty of positives to talk about tonight. So, mate, I might just kick off to you to start the night. It's a challenge, I guess, in many ways to pick out highlight. Do you have a set highlight or something over the course of that night, that game that really stood out to you? Something that you love to see. There's obviously many, but have you got one that stands out to you? Maybe one that's a little bit left field.
Not much that's left field because I think everything about that game has been talked about at length. We obviously know that it was a coming of age game for Stafford Tower. I think that's pretty fair assumption. The one thing that obviously people have spoken about Brooks and just Brooks, but the thing that I really wanted to highlight is how well that spine is starting to mesh.
And when you say people just talking about Brooks,
media.
You might take your own little dunce cap off a little bit there and eat a wee bit of humble pie.
A little bit of humble pie. But I did say it was going to take quite a few games for him to redeem himself. I just want to see consistency. I don't think he was a superstar in any way, shape, or form. But he was a damn good halfback.
Yeah.
And that's
still work to be done with Brooksy, isn't there? But game, no doubt.
And I will, eat my humble pie and I will, swallow my words and say that he had a great game. But what impressed me the most and what has pleased me the most is how well that spine is starting to combine. Yeah. Yep. It's no more evident than that last try. No more evident. It was like, how often do we see that? That was literally watching that, how smooth that transition was. Yes, it was against tired middle forwards right at the back end of the half, right at the back end of the game. But how smooth that transition was, it very, very, very much looked how clinical that the Stormies stood back when they had the big four.
They basically invented that play.
Yeah.
That cross switch with Billy Slater cruising through the centre off to the support player. And they nailed it, and a few teams started to emulate it. They even started to use it a little bit when Pappenhausen was hitting his strides a year or two back before he got injured. And they did it best. They invented it. They did it best. And 100%, I couldn't agree with you more. The fact that it was in like the 77th minute or something, it was the 11th try we scored, and we were still that slick 3 minutes from full time is remarkable.
Yeah, and it's just, that's what pleased me the most. Like, I think that we have talked at length about the quality of our forward pack, where we definitely harped on how much Bull has grown in such a short period of time. And we've definitely spoken about how I think it will be fair to say at the end of the year that Appy will be called the best buy of the year from any team. I think we have the best buy of the year in Appy. But the thing that just pleased me the most was just, Wakeham knew when to take the ball, when to call for it, knew when to kick for it, kick it, and things like that. And Brooks chimed in when he needed to, but it was all run around Appy if you really look at it. And that's something that you flagged quite a few weeks ago is playing to your strengths. And we did that to a T.
Yeah, that's what they're doing, aren't they? And you can tell the forwards are benefiting. We've been talking about it for a couple of months, is that Appy's ability to bring the forwards onto the ball should be the cornerstone of how this team should play. It's taken a while to figure it out, but geez, when they play to their strengths, geez, they look good. And never was it more evident than the fact that Steph got a try from Appy directly, so bringing his forward onto the ball. So did Joffa, both crash plays, but both through that deception with Appy being nice and flat at the line.
Yep.
Bowl, I think, made another half break. He keeps continuing to make these little half breaks.
Yep.
And so, the run meters that Clemmer continues to get, Steph just being big again, off of Hangowie having a gigantic game in what has effectively been his last game for the club, unfortunately. But that power game through the middle off the back of Appy has allowed everything else to play off the back of that out wide. And, we've been talking about it for a little bit of time. And obviously it seems to be something that, is starting to click. And look, it was a night where all the passes stuck, no doubt. But the fact that team, as we said, is very, very aware of what their strengths are. And they're basically starting to attach pieces to those strengths. That's what you got to do. That's what the best coaches do. And yeah, it's starting to work. It's starting to work in big ways. One game, but that's us 3 from our last 4. If you include 2 buys in that, in the space of 6 weeks, we've gone from 0-7 to basically racking up 10 points out of a possible 12 in the last 6 weeks after heading into next week. So, look, it's probably best case scenario in many ways. We've been talking about being a team on the up. We're probably going to have a couple of reality checks, but at the very least, this team moving forward is going to be a hard team to beat.
No, 100%. And that's the thing. It took 75 minutes for the best team in the comp to put us to the sword, and putting us to the sword was a 20-point win. Wasn't a 66-18 win. So,
and I guess you could say that they were lucky to get to 20 points.
Exactly.
Could have been a couple of tries. 2 converted tries in the end was probably more reflective of the game, I think. 100%. Talking about the South game we are, but yeah.
Yeah. What about yourself? Apart from the obvious that we've already talked about, was there anything else that surprised you? Or not surprised you, pleased you?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The obvious one would be Stafford Toa and Buller's contribution. Brooks and Wakeham both going from strength to strength. The chemistry between the side, to your point, seems to be coming along. So there's a multitude of areas that seem to be improving over time. I think we're a team that are able at the moment, we're learning to actually dictate possession count. So their discipline was way up. Their completion rates continue to be really high, above 90%, which is brilliant. I was speaking to you a lot at the pub about play the territory game. And that's something I've noticed they've started to do a lot as well, is aim to play the game down the opposition's half. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward, but sometimes in a game or often in a game, you have to actually manipulate that to gain territory, whether it's early kicks, whether it's being expansive in your own half to gain ground.
Whether it's not just strong carries back from your wingers.
Yeah, and also making sure that you are line speed down in their end and keeping them there. Pressure on kickers, as you said, as soon as we get the ball, kick returns, get as many meters as we can. So I think they're starting to play that territory game. So there's just so many different facets in which they are just ticking all these boxes and have been for a while, I think. And then it was on the weekend we saw all those stats in our favour come to fruition and actually show on the scoreboard. And so seeing those stats convert into points and then convert into a confidence-building win, Brooksy's 200th, all that stuff was super. So very happy in that regard. There was one particular play that, before I forget, and I don't get a chance to mention it later in the pod, I'll mention it now, which was one thing, and I mentioned to you live, that stood out to me. I must have said it probably 2 or 3 times. There was a play which was for our 3rd try when Toa ended up putting Nofaluma in the corner. and we went on a sweep, basically, but we went on a forward sweep. Clemmer got the ball out to offer Hengawi, quick hands to Wakeham, equally quick hands to Bateman.
Yeah.
Now, Bateman went to pass straight away, but then realised in an instant that if he held the ball and ran 3 or 4 steps and drew,
Valentine.
I think
it was Holmes.
Holmes or Drinkwater, yeah. Whether Drinkwater's in the line, I think it was Holmes, yeah. Drew Holmes slightly, and that would have given Jareen time to get on his outside. And that simple play, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the third try that we scored really closely, and you'll see what Bateman does. It happens in an instant, but many players in the past would have quickly passed on to Buller for a 3-on-3. He didn't. He went to, realised in a split second, ran at Holmes himself and popped to Buller, which made it a 4-on-3, and we just drew and pass, and then the last draw and pass from Tower to suck in Drinkwater. I remember saying at the pub that right there was something we haven't had in a long time, and it's experience, it's game sense, and it's execution. And it's not simply a winger diving for a corner to pull off a miracle play. It's being able to capitalise on half chances. And that was a half chance that in the past, I reckon we would have just shoveled the ball, ended up 3-on-3 and killed the play. Just watching it just made me really, really, really happy. And I think that we've got more and more of those types of players in our side. And I think we're going to see more and more of those types of things happen where we start to take these half chances with ability to read the game live, experience, cool heads, and the ability to execute on these half chances is something that hopefully, but I'm starting to see more of. And on the weekend, that was something that really, really pleased me. Not above the scoreline, obviously, but you recall, I remember saying it a couple of times.
Quite a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one thing really put a smile on my face in particular. Yeah. So hopefully we can see a bit more of that. And equally as well, like John Bateman, like he didn't stand out on the weekend, but he was right there off that slick play that you mentioned. Perfectly next to Jareen to score that last try in support.
Yeah.
You know, if he's not pushing up for that ifs, buts, maybes, then he's not there to score that try. So, yeah, that's a couple of nice things that Bateman did that may have gone unnoticed in terms of the subtleties of it, but are making a big difference to that team. And there's a few players now starting to do that in terms of the players we've brought in, as well as the young guns really stepping up. Polle had a ripper game. Buller, obviously. Toa, probably the best performance in a West Tigers jersey from a centre that we can remember. Maybe outside of something that Lawrence did, maybe, but they've been pushing it.
I was about to say, like it's been a while, but you managed to mention Lawrence again. So
I had to mention Rowdy, my favourite player of all time. But
yeah,
and Junior Tupou as well. Like so, you know, we're really starting to grow in a mix. We're going to have a couple of setbacks as we move forward, but those are the couple of things that stood out for me, other than the obvious individual performances and the team tries.
Yeah, and more to that, like how you're talking about that football smarts and those little things. I've mentioned to you in a couple of pods previously, probably a couple of times as well. The thing that had been frustrating me about Brooks is how he just shuttles the ball on, doesn't dig into the line, doesn't take those 2 extra steps to draw the defender in, doesn't turn his hips to act as if, like, to sort of look like he's going out the back for that sweep or to go short, to sort of have the defense second guessing. And then you watch that game and you watch that try, I think it was the cutout pass from, a beautiful cutout pass from Wakeham to Tupou. You watch Brooks do that, and Brooks was the reason that became an overlap, because he dug into the line and he turned his hips. So he caused the defense to second guess, and like literally half a second manages to get that 3-on-2 out the back.
Yeah.
And that's
he held up that third man in, as you're saying.
Yeah.
By that slight straighten pivot twist by straightening his hips to the try line, as you said. It's classic straightening the attack, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like that's all I've been asking him to do, just to dig in and do that, because it is so effective, because it is such a fast game now that instincts do tend to take over. You're like, I need to shut this down so the defender's going to either sit on his heels or literally hold for half a second, a quarter of a second. But that's that little bit of extra time needed for the outside backs to get on the outside of their defenders. So
yeah, and what they were doing on the weekend as well that they haven't for the longest time, that we have been critical of, is that they're actually passing at speed, moving in numbers and passing at speed on those backline sweeps. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, provided the passes find the mark, which they're not going to every game, but they certainly did on the weekend. We made space, and it's amazing what happens when you do that. If you run those sweeps or those second man plays or whatever you want to call them, if you do those at 2/3 speed, 66% speed, you're not going to get on the outside of anyone. But we created multiple overlaps doing that, and yeah, very pleasing to see. Okay, let's get into some of the individual performances a little bit. I guess there's a lot of obvious ones as well. We'll probably start with your man of the match.
Oh, hard to go past Toa.
Yeah,
there was a lot of very good players on there, but for somebody, and he's still a kid. He's still 21?
22.
22.
22.
So he's still, he's still 15 years younger than us. So he's a kid.
He's a year older than Buller.
Yeah. And he absolutely schooled Valentine Holmes, who is a representative center at both Origin and international level. He is a grand final winner. He's I think there's probably a chance he was a Dally M Center of the Year. Who knows? I don't actually know if he was, but he is a good player, and he absolutely towed him. Took him to school. I don't think there was a time like when he had first contact of the ball in his hands that he didn't beat a defender. I don't think he was taken down once by the first pair of hands that grabbed him.
Yeah,
he was so
beat the first man every time. 5 line breaks,
yeah.
1 line break assist, 1 try assist, 2 tries, 15 tackle breaks,
200 and something odd meter running meters.
Yeah, something along those sorts of lines.
Yeah, it was
230 running meters.
There you go, and that's it. Like that's, like I said, that's clearly like has been very, very solid before that. Like,
sorry, 12 tackle breaks. I don't want to get that wrong.
No, don't, especially if Valentine Holmes are listening. But I mentioned before, it was every once in a while a player has a performance like that. Now, he has been good in the centers, and he has impressed me in the centers. When he's been playing outside position, I could take him or leave him. But in the centers is definitely his thing. And there's performances from players that make you stand up and take notice, but sometimes they're just a flash in the pan. I can think of debuts that were like amazing, and then I never heard from him again. I think there was that young winger for the Titans back in 2008. He scored 4 tries, and it was like, this guy's going to be the best thing ever. I think it was Atkins, maybe his name was. But yeah, like
Jordan Atkins.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And it was a flash in the pan. I don't see this being a flash in the pan for Toa.
He's also played 50 games too, because it was obviously his 50th on the weekend as well. So, but we and you in particular have been talking him up in the last month, at least in terms of quickly progressing, in terms of really getting rid of his weak points last year. I think in attack we were always pretty happy with him, particularly in the centres, right?
Yeah.
But it was his defence that let him down, both his first contact in defence and some of his reads. He's completely eradicated that, and then he's just absolutely injected his attack with steroids recently in the last.
Don't say that, because if it's actually true and we get another Bronson cherry on our hands, I won't be happy.
No, he's too pure of heart, so he wouldn't be doing that. But not doing that and playing anyway. But yeah, and the consistency to which he's bringing it, he won't be doing that performance obviously every single week. But consistently in the last 4 to 6 weeks since he's been playing in the starting centre position, he's consistently playing really, really, really well.
He's consistently been one of our best, and then on the weekend he was our best.
Yeah, beats the first man every time.
So strong, like that's so much upper body strength, and not only that, like we know he's quick off the line, but I remember, it's funny that I'm going to quote the guy because I can't stand him, but Gus Gould said, if you're quick, you're powerful. That's just the end result.
Speed is power.
Yeah, and I think he said that exact line about Rowdy. So yeah, just thought I'd throw his name in there again.
Love him.
But
Love you, Christopher.
He's just so powerful. So powerful. And you don't really get an opportunity to show that sort of power unless you play in the centers. Like you think about, Latrell's an amazing player, so skillful. He is powerful as well. But when he's in the centers, you just see how powerful he is. I mean, one-on-one from a fullback perspective, crashing the line, that's definitely a show of strength. But when you're in the centers and you are essentially shrugging off 3 defenders to make your way to the try line, that's true power. And that's the thing. He's just so powerful.
And it's pound for pound. It's unsuspecting speed and unsuspecting power, I think. And there's a few players that I like in a similar mold. Katoni Staggs is one.
Yep.
Like, stature-wise, he doesn't look enormous or anything in particular. He doesn't stand out when you look at him. But he's incredibly powerful. He's got a ridiculous fend and he's lightning. And Teddy is the same, and particularly, over the course of his career. Tedesco is such a powerfully built individual, had one hell of a fend. And I actually think that he and Toa, at times, they seem to have a similar running style. You watch how low they are to the ground and how much they move laterally. You can see it really well on the try that he scored, the close range one where Brooks just dropped it back on the inside and he beat Dearden to the line. When he plants his foot low to the ground, he just gets stuck and moves, and he just moves really, really well. Look, it's quite incredible, and we re-signed him last year. If he continues this form through the back end of this year, I'd be upgrading and extending again, because we may well, and I don't want to go off too soon, but in terms of trajectories for a young player, we may well have found a long-term centre there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we were talking about this on Saturday night. Start of the year, we had Capola and Naden as our starting centers, and then we were talking potentially. I think had our heart set on that after Capola had played a couple of games at center. Capola's on the bench for me now. He's our back row thing. Like, Talau's out, he's gone. When Naden comes
he's going
back,
to Manly, likely, I think so.
Yeah, when is he going to Manly this year or next year?
Next year. Not going to next year, I don't think, but
yeah. But I think it's...
And Capola's had a good year. We've been waxing lyrical about how well he started. He's fallen out of the side a little bit in the last probably month or so, but he hasn't had a poor year at all.
No. And that's the thing, like, excuse me, you can't, especially after that performance, like, it's not just, like I said, it's not just that one performance that makes a player. It's the consistency before that. Like you said, he's been one of our best week in, week out for about the better part of 5 weeks. And then he was just our best. And that's it. Like, that there, for me, has solidified himself as our first pick centers, regardless if Naden's fit or not. He's picked first before Naden in my eyes.
Yeah, he's definitely given himself a buffer zone and the opportunity for the next few months to continue that form. And if he does, then he's just going to firmly entrench himself in that side, as you said, as the first centre pick. We've been talking for a long time, and you in particular have been talking for a long time about a strike centre. And, in many ways, he's not Tom Trbojevic or Latrell Mitchell, who are centres in Origin, but they're fullbacks in real life. You look across the league at the moment as to who's in form. You'd say somebody like Campbell Graham.
Yep.
And a few others along those sorts of lines. But his game on the weekend was as good or better than anything that any other centre has shown all year, far and away.
I'd say the last couple of years. I can't remember. Maybe Tony Stagg, that one game for the Broncos, either last year or the year before.
Yeah.
When he I vividly remember him 40 meters out, fending off 4 players and scoring a try, but that was like his best game by far.
It was irresistible. That got him into the New South Wales side for game 1 last year.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Staggs as well, New South Wales boy, so how could I not be? But I don't think many people saw this level of improvement in Stafford Toa. But if he has been able to improve his game that much and he's able to continue on that upward trajectory and he's able to bring that consistent high level to his game, I feel as though on the checklist of things that we're looking to add to our squad, knowing full well that we've got money to spend over the next couple of years from now, maybe a strike centre is something that might possibly be able to fall back down the list a little bit, which would be huge.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. From what I had have thought to myself, and I probably voiced it on the pod as well, 5-6 weeks ago, of where we needed to invest our money. I'm finding it very, very difficult to not just reinvest in ourselves now. Of what I've seen over the last 5 weeks, and credit where credit's due. Brooks is in this conversation now as well. I think he's potentially turned a corner again. Maybe he's finally understood his best way to play, and understood that it's not all on him, or I don't know, I'm not making excuses for him, but he's definitely
look. In regards to Brooks, Appy has been huge for him, right?
100%.
I think it's twofold, or possibly threefold. I think Appy, number one. I think the forwards doing what the forwards are doing, number two, or probably number three actually, and number two I think is actually the influence of Benji.
I think it's the influence of Sheens, if I'm being brutally honest.
Combination of the two, possibly, yeah. But that coaching approach, I think the mad shackles are off him, where he was told to play a very structured, rigid style that wanted to be played, and I think he's starting slowly to trust himself again. And Brooks has had flash in the pan games throughout his career, but he has pieced together, and like everybody else, and this is what I really like, is not only is it certain players or the team as a whole, but the majority of players are all slowly trending upwards and are finding consistency over the last 5 to 6 weeks. 5 to 6 weeks doesn't make a season, but if this is what we're expecting to see, he's one of them. He has been playing consistently good and high level footy for the last 4 to 6 weeks. You just think back to the Penrith game. Single-handedly in some ways, he won us that game with his kicking game. And then what he's done off the back of that through the next few games that we've played as well. So, yeah, really pleasing to see the consistency in Brooks, because I guess that's what we've been crying out for, right?
Yes, 100%. And that's the thing. Yes, Penrith his kicking game did definitely win us that game. By far, those two 40-20s. The thing was, when we played the Dragons, again, it actually wasn't him. And that's the thing that I think I was vocal of that next pod was we were in the Dragons red zone for so long, for a large percentage of that game, and we couldn't put points on there. But it actually wasn't Brooks's doing. It was the fact that no one was running those lines that he needed to. So him personally, yes, he has been a consistent NRL standard halfback for the better part of 5 weeks. But it still takes a little bit more. It's still going to take a little bit more.
That sounds like a backhanded compliment when you say it like that.
Why?
Oh, just saying, yes, he's been NRL standard for 5 whole weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to emphasize that. It's for 5 weeks.
Look, it's a valid point. In a 10-year career,
Yeah. And that's the thing. This isn't, I'm not bashing Brooks, because I did say that I'll eat my words and he had an amazing game. Well, not an amazing game, but he was exactly what we needed for that game, and he's been exactly what we needed for the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
But
he and Wakeham are doing is filling their role.
That's right.
Role really well.
Let's just keep the momentum going. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we want. We keep using this term trending upwards, trending upwards, trending upwards. We've been talking about it, and the results hadn't started to come. The results are starting to come. We're starting to see it. We're trending upwards in, as I said, not just individuals or not just a team performance, not just general categories of statistics. We're trending upwards across the board, I find. There's not many players, bar maybe a Tommy Talau or someone, who had probably a better game on the weekend, albeit a bit of an innocuous game than what he did the week before. But there's not many players that aren't improving slightly or a lot week on week on week, particularly from that turning point, which seems to be the Manly game, or the Parramatta Manly game, which is where it all seemed to start, and we started to actually get closer to our position and compete a lot more. And so that's really good. So we'd mentioned before, we were talking about the strike centres and how, provided Toa continues on the trajectory that he's currently on, he might actually fill that role for us. and that our centre stocks might be sitting reasonably well, at least with he and Naden, with Kapara as a backup. We're always looking to fill these things. We've got some juniors coming through. Josh Falidi is one who's currently playing flag, who a lot of raps on him, and he's been doing quite well playing up a grade. So, that's an area for us. But it's a good segue, I guess, into talking about the fact that the club has moved on. Someone who probably it would be hard pressed to say that he's done anything except give the best account of himself whilst he's been at the club, and that person would be Joe Offahengawi. A good clubman, a person who probably came to the club and was at the club during its worst time in its history. Well, not probably, definitely, during its toughest times, and was the player of the year that we won the wooden spoon. And that's a hell. It sounds like a funny thing to say, but that's a hell of an achievement because it shows how much he was putting in and how much effort he was doing, despite the fact the results were not there on the field.
Yeah.
Tremendous clubman. Someone who I think was pretty well liked in the squad, and he's been moved on to Parramatta now. By all reports, he was on around that 650 for the next couple of years, about 450 this year. He didn't have a guaranteed spot in the pack, which meant that he was performing a wonderful role from the bench. But 650, let's be honest, is almost representative starting second rower money. And he had an opportunity at Para, who obviously wanted him, paid full freight, and we were happy to let him go. So I'm disappointed to lose him, but I can see the logic in it. That being said, the segue into that is, if the centres for the moment are looking okay, it doesn't seem as though a strike centre is a necessity now. What are we doing moving forward? So that sort of led us into Brooks and the halves discussion. We're still severely lacking class in that area, I would say. As much as I love what Brendan Wakeham and Brooks have been doing for the last month. What are you thinking squad-wise? Who are you thinking targeting-wise? I'm sort of put you on the spot here. Didn't have a chance to sort of have a look at that. But look, we have cap money. We've still got Mitchell Moses money from the start of the year, for goodness sake, and we've just freed up, more cash into next year. So you mentioned upgrade younger blokes. What are you thinking?
So off the back of that too, because we've let go Joffa, it means we have a spot available in our top 30.
Yeah.
And we have to fill that within the next month. June 30 still.
Do you have to fill all 30? I think you can actually have 29 by the end of by June 30, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in that it has to be filled.
But okay. It's a bit grey area that it's not really clear. The NRL doesn't do a great job at really making that clear, do they?
No. But I could be wrong. I'm confident about a lot of things and wrong probably 50% of the time. So, look, I'm not sure anymore. I think that from over the last 5 weeks, I think there's been quite a bit of stability, and that's led to some pretty good performances. Again, like you said, I'm not super sold on the halves at the moment. I think it's fair to say that we probably got our fullback now. I think we're both very confident that, Bull is there hopefully for the long haul.
Look, from what he's done, it'd be hard to see anything otherwise.
Oh, unless the Roosters come and take him. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's taken from underneath us. But yeah, like honestly, who out there foreseeably on the market would you have to replace him, considering what he's done since he's come into grade and the fact that he will only get better over time?
He's only 21, literally.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think we are still quite lacking in the halves. I think that they're doing an admirable job. But I think if we lose the class that is Appy, I think it'll come crashing down. So, touch wood, and I'm touching wood very, very hard for people that aren't hearing because I've got a wooden desk. Touch wood, nothing happens to Appy in the Origin. And he comes back unscathed and he's all good. But if something did happen in a dreadful, dreadful world I don't want to live in, I can't see them lifting the team at all. So I don't know. It's actually one of the toughest questions we've had to answer in any recent pod, because I don't know. Do I?
You don't know where we improve you don't know where we improve the squad. Now, look, would you replace Junior Tupou with anybody at the moment?
No,
Probably not. Well, we're not playing fantasy football, right? So probably not. Jarian Bully wouldn't replace with anybody at the moment.
no.
I think when we say that, we're not saying, oh, you mean you wouldn't put Latrell in there? It's like that's not happening.
No.
So there's no one on the market. There's no foreseeable options. Nothing along those sorts of lines. So
we're being realistic here.
Yeah, and if you then go across the rest of the back line, we've just spoken about Toa. I wouldn't replace Toa at the moment with any feasible options. Naden, I've been really pleased with Naden in every area except for his discipline. So if you can get that right,
he gets that shit out of his game, and he's like, we've got our centre parent.
Exactly right. Obviously the 9, close to if not the best 9 in the competition. Appy speaks for himself. Our front row is phenomenal.
Ridiculous.
Our back row, same deal. Lock is still that position of interest, I guess. There's a couple of whispers around with Joffa moving on that possibly a Bloor might come into the bench. We might see some Bateman Lock stuff that I think you might have floated. I think they're going to still play around with Lock a little bit, maybe see Pollard move back to the front row rotation, which is essentially what he is, which is a possibility. So Lock, we could have a look. We've got obviously Matamua in the lower grades, Kit Lealiti coming through as well, Chris Fa'agutu as well. So we're well stocked with juniors. So Lock's an interesting one. Do we have a stopgap and breed one up, or do we do we buy one? So, it just all comes back to the halves, like you said. And personally, what I think actually is that we keep both those halves, but it's in a shootout. So essentially, we need to try to find ourselves one half, preferably a halfback who is marquee. Now, that sounds easier said than done. And I don't know if you recall back around when Mitchell Moses was still on the table, possibly, that I said, this is a big miss if it happens that we miss, because after Mitchell Moses, there is nobody of note on the market anytime soon that is of that in that upper echelon. Now, he actually hasn't been playing the house down that much, to be honest. And in some ways, I'm kind of glad we didn't pay 1.3 for him now where we're at. But if you look across the league, there's not many people that you would put in that category. Mitchell Pearce isn't particularly interested. He's also 35 and a stopgap. You've got a few people mentioned Chad Townsend if he was out of favour up in North Queensland, but you look at what he's done this year. He's fallen off a cliff as well. You saw him on the weekend. He offered absolutely nothing. Ben Hunt, probably not a whole lot of interest in coming to us and would cost us Mitchell Moses money. And again, he's a stopgap. He's probably got 2 or 3 years left. Good player. Most definitely a good player. But probably not really an option either. So we're in a bit of an interesting situation there with the halves. You got Dewey next year that at some point will come back, obviously from a third ACL. So the risks there speak for themselves. It's an interesting situation. There seems to be just a gigantic hole in terms of top end quality halves. And the fact that Cherry Evans is still playing the house down at 34, still captain of Queensland. I can't think of the next Queensland halfback, can you? That picks themselves.
No.
Like Dearden's playing 5'8" for North Queensland. They're playing like bastards. We beat them 66-18 on the weekend. Like I can't think of another Queensland halfback that's putting their hand up once Cherry Evans retires.
No, I'm trying to think now as well. I don't.
You look across the league. Who are your best halfbacks? You probably got Cherry Evans, Nathan Cleary, Adam Reynolds, Jerome Hughes, Mitchell Moses. Who else are we talking about, really?
Yeah. No, we got Jamal Fogarty, who's, he's okay. He's good, but he's not a world-class half.
No.
Lachlan Ilias, still very young.
Yeah. Also, Ilias is very up and down as well. The jury's out on what he will become. He's a solid first grader, but he had a shocker on the weekend against Para. That still happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's not a And I don't even know if there's an influx of decent halves coming through yet. We could try to sign Jock Madden back if you really wanted to.
Have you watched him play in these Brisbane two performances this year? Unfortunately, and I like Jock. He looks like an honest player and an honest bloke, but he's been so off the pace. Yeah, really poor. Good kicking game, defense average. Unfortunately for Jock, I can't see him staying as the Brisbane backup for too long. Unfortunately for the young fella, but yeah, it's an interesting situation that teams are finding themselves in, isn't it?
Yeah,
Johnson was the other one that I was running off in my list of fingers that, again, they're stopgaps. There's like a big generation next, and there just doesn't seem to be a big wave coming through.
No, apparently it was all starting with Sam Walker, and he's playing reserve grade, and it's it's not like it was 10 years ago when you had all these coming through. When Cherry Evans made his debut in 2011, and then you just started getting
Reynolds.
Probably started with Cronk, to be honest, when Cronk debuted, and then it just kept going through and then through and then through. Like you think about probably the start of the 2000s, like the back end of then, it was like there was a bit of a gap there between Joey and Thurston finding form and Cronk. But you knew they were coming through and you knew they were going to get good. It's not like that right now. I mean, you had Sorry.
I was going to say, there's definitely a few good halves out in the juniors around the traps, most definitely. The likes of Ethan Sanders out at Parramatta, who has just had his pathway, I guess, opened a little bit with Jake Arthur moving to Manly. You've got, Carl Olawapu, who's down with the Doggies now from Wavell State High up here at Brisbane. You've got a young fella out at Penrith. I forget his name, but there's another decent halfback coming through. He's not Hawkins. That's a Hawkins out at South, but I forget the name of him. So there's definitely juniors around. We just signed an Iverson Matai out of Canterbury, who's been pretty solid in their system. We've got a couple of good players in our younger system as well. Oliver Laurie out of New Zealand. So there's good players coming through across the board, but there's no one that's star quality and ready in that 18 to 22 bracket, really, that you can see, bar maybe a Sam Walker. So he's an interesting proposition. Now, I don't particularly think he's a realistic option for the Tigers if things did go south at the Roosters. There's an ironic statement, south at the Roosters, but we all know the Roosters are pretty ruthless when it comes to making roster decisions, and he's obviously been on the out. He's actually out with a leg injury at the moment. But if they decide that Keary and Manu are it long term, with Hutchison possibly as a backup, and they might even think about having a crack at like a Ben Hunt or something for a couple of years, like they did with Cronk, to buy more premierships, then Walker might quickly find himself on the out. Is he the type of player that you would have a look at?
No. I'll be pretty honest about that. No.
Okay, why is that?
Because I've never been a huge fan of Walker, and I'll be honest with that.
Sam, not Cody, we're talking about.
No, I love Cody Walker. Yes, I feel like if he was in any other system other than the Roosters, he would have he'd be nowhere near the quality that they think he is now. I think he is a product of his environment. I think that, and by that I mean, when you have the players like Tedesco, like Keary, like Manu, all of them, they are star quality players that make players around them look good. I think that if he came to us, he wouldn't be able to do what we need him to do. And that's just my understanding. So
is that the West Tigers as they have been, or is that the West Tigers as to where we're going? Because I think they are two different sides, and I think it's pretty hard to deny, as we keep saying, that this club is moving forward, trending upwards, as we keep saying. Is he a fit for this club as we develop into a club that hopefully continues to play stronger and stronger football? He certainly isn't a fit in the side we've been.
He's what, sorry?
I said he certainly isn't a fit for the side that we have been in the last few years. But I guess, could you envision him being a fit for this particular side the way we're going, given who the coaches are, given the type of style that we want to play, all that sort of stuff as well? Or you generally just don't, aren't a big fan of his playing style and just don't think he would suit our club?
I'm just not a big fan of his playing style.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think that he makes more poor choices than he does good. I think everyone talks about the good games he had last year. Why don't they talk about the games that he didn't play well last year? Because there was probably an even number. It's just the fact that he had Tedesco to save him, that he had Manu to save him. So
Manu's a big one. Manu played the house down last year, obviously.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, anyone looks good in a side like that. I just don't. I just don't like the fact that. Look, and at the same time, he is young. He is quite young, and
He's
you know
20.
he might evolve into a player that can easily direct a team around and make those right choices and be that half that's needed. But if you ask me now to sign him, I'd say no. If you ask me in 3 years to sign him, might be a different story.
Yeah, and he's adamant he's not going anywhere either. And he'll fight for his position. He's under contract, all that sort of stuff as well. But there's always, there's whispers that happen when people get demoted. And, this is in some ways how players do move clubs or how the conversations start. So it's just an interesting name. The only other one I would mention probably is one that's been raised in our circles quite a bit, and for good reason. The fact that our power brokers were out with his manager just last week in Mario Tartak is Josh Schuster.
Yeah.
So obviously well documented. He had a blinder on the weekend, but he's had his troubles over his time at Manly for a number of different reasons: attitude, weight gain, injury issues, bits and pieces. Come out recently and said that no, there's no leaving Manly to go to the Tigers. That's not happening. However, we know what these things mean when it comes to that sort of stuff. Where would you stand on Schuster? Obviously, clearly not a fix for the half problem, more so the 5'8", even possibly lock problem. What are your thoughts on him?
I would snap him up in a heartbeat.
So what is it about Schuster that you like in terms of, we talk of playing style with Walker? What is it about Schuster's playing style that you think would complement our side and where we're trying to go?
He plays a lot more eyes up football than Walker does, in my eyes. I think that you watch that game on the weekend that he played, almost every try that he had a hand in, it was a very unorthodox, off the cuff sort of delivery. There was, I don't know if it was a try, but I think it was knocked on by Croker. But he, a very traditional bloody Scotty Prince banana kick over the side from the left-hand side into the middle of the field. And, that just it was just like, I can see that there's a gap there. I can see that my team's running there. It took half a second for him to realize it. Eyes up football, done.
Yeah, so he's instinctual and he breaks down structures.
Yes.
In a way is what you're saying, yeah. Which in the modern day where, it's not as bad as what it was maybe 5-10 years ago, was everything was block play, block play, block play. But, very regimented structures these days. Many defenses are actually hard to break down. So that can be an asset. An unorthodox player, that's one of the assets of Bateman in a way.
Yeah. And just, I think you have a look at the way that the Roosters have always played. They are quite structured.
Look at who one of their halves coaches is with Cooper Cronk.
Yeah,
and the role he's played in the club. He's missed a structure.
Exactly, and that's it. That's also the way that Sam Walker plays. And yes, Sam Walker also has those moments of eyes up football. But from what I've seen, and this is again, I will actually say that I haven't watched. I'm not hyper focused on Sam Walker when the Roosters are playing, so I'm not really focusing on too much. But when he does play that eyes up football, it looks like it's a panic move. He doesn't really know exactly what's going to happen after that. Whereas you look at what Schuster does, it looks like he understands that he's trying to achieve something with what he's trying to do.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it was just like Gus said it perfectly. Whenever Josh Schuster passed, 9 times out of 10, it's always a no-look pass, but it always lands on the chest. because he knows that they're going to be there, and he trusts himself to do that.
Yeah, very instinctual player. To me, I read it a little bit different. I actually think Sam Walker and Schuster are both very heads-up players. I think they're in different systems. One is stifling, which is at the Roosters, and I think that was one of the issues, is that Walker, in some ways, has a bit of a Brooks disease, and that they're trying to coach all this instinctual, off-the-cuff stuff out of him. You know, the big loopy rainbow passes, the chip and chases on the 50-metre line. You know, I think they're trying to get him to play more structured, and it hasn't been quite working. Whereas Schuster, I think, is given a bit more of a license at Manly, or at the very least, they're not playing as structured. They're not trying to force him into a particular box. I think one part of that is the club and the structures at their individual clubs. I think one part of that is the fact that one plays halfback, one plays 5'8". I think 5'8", they've got a lot more leeway, generally speaking, to play a little bit more of that one wider off the ruck. You know, they can a little bit less regimented depending on their role within the side as that 5'8". But yeah, it's interesting. Look, and those are the two blokes probably that stand out in that next brigade coming through of halves. Obviously, they're very different players. They're different sizes, different shapes, different structures of people, different statures. You know, so if we go back to where we improve our halves stocks. Personally, I think in some ways, if you can fit them all into the squad, I think you find a short-term place for Brooks and Wakeham at least next year, and then Dewey's obviously still under 1 year next year, even if all three of them are on a single year extension, because I think you're going to need to have that backup halves. I don't know who then you would try to bring in. We've tried and failed some of the other stopgaps, so I don't know if there actually is any, to be honest. I just don't know what we need class in the halves. We need a superstar. They're just not out there.
Johnson might be come back on the thing now that Tavita Harris
Tavita.
Yeah.
Well, what that does do is it creates a logjam there. He's come out and said he won't, so I don't think that Johnson will. But they've also got over there Metcalf, they've got Volkman, and they've got Tamari Martin.
Yeah,
that's five halves within.
Does Tamari Martin come back?
Yeah, well, maybe. You know, you don't know. And you look at that and you go, okay, well, which one of those is an improvement? Who would you take?
Tamari Martin, by far.
Tamari Martin's a good player. I think Metcalf is a good player, but he's a different type of player. He's certainly not a halfback. I like the look of Volkman, but I think he's very simplistic in his game. I think he would do a good job. I don't think any of them knock those guys out of our 30 for immediate replacement. I really like, to be honest, particularly bang for buck what Wakeham has brought to the club this year.
Yeah.
I'm being pleasantly surprised. He hasn't set the world on fire. That being said, you know, his pass for Tupou in that game on the weekend was fire, and his goal kicking is it
9 from 9.
Yeah, goal kicking is an asset, but I don't think he gets the plaudits that he deserves, to be honest. And actually, the role that he is playing within that trio of him, Brooks and Appy, I think he's complementing them really well, to be perfectly honest. He's the simple, structured, basic, high percentage general of sorts that the club has needed. He might not be the best quality of that sort player in the league, but he's doing a terrific job. So, yeah, personally, I think those three and someone else that you can bring in is what you look to do, because Brooks has a lot of football left in him, as is Wakeham, obviously. And Dewey, we don't know. We don't know what he's going to come back like, if he's going to come back at all. But he's there next year regardless. So if they take it, I'd do 1 year on each of them. And yeah, maybe we look at one of those Warriors blokes. Outside of that, you know, there's a Jonah Pezzett down in Storm. He's signed on long term. You won't be able to get him out of the Storm. He looks the goods. Ethan Sanders, I mentioned, from Parramatta. He looks pretty good in the juniors. I've talked about him before. I don't know the depth charts on all the clubs enough to know where the next best option would be. Certainly no one's jumping off paper. So, you know, where do we spend this money?
Yeah, I go with what you've suggested numerous times. And look, if we've got the money, let's front load.
Yeah,
let's front load. And let's keep these kids on a bit of a heavier contract now, when it pays off dividends at the back end of their careers.
Yeah, we spoke about that last week, didn't we? Talk about when there's when the market is a seller's market, you got to do what you can to make sure you've got money at the right time. The best way you do that is front loading your stock, front loading your squad, making sure all the juniors that you want to keep, you can keep because you've got the money in place to do it. And that means that you've got money in the chest 2-3 years, whenever it is down the line, because eventually gun halves come off at a certain time, certain years. If we're talking about halves, for example, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. Some of those years are big years for good halves available. Other years are the cupboard is bare.
Yeah.
And the cupboard happens to be bare now. So it's juniors and front loading, unfortunately, for some people. Some people get annoyed by that. And I think that's where a lot of the commentary, at least in Tigers forum circles, have been when it comes to Joffa, is they're expecting a replacement or expecting that money to go immediately to somebody. Unfortunately, I get that pain, but you can only shop what's in the shop. You can only buy what's in the shop window, and there's not much out there. So the best bet you can do is what we spoke about last week and what we just mentioned there. Front load, look to your juniors, and we've got the likes of Miller coming through, Talon De Silva coming through, the Leo Lee brothers coming through, Chris Fa'ugutu, these types of players, Tofu Iono, Lady Gaga, it sounds like Lady Gaga, Lady Gaga. There's a lot of players coming through in that younger generation. You got Lachlan Galvin, these guys that are 17, 18, 19 years of age. You want them around and available when they come of age, because sometimes you can't pick who is going to kick on from 19 onwards. Your best 16, 17, 18-year-olds aren't always going to be your best first-grade players. Usually that's your best guess. But if you've got money and the means to be able to keep these guys around until such time, one, you can develop them, and two, you can see how they get on and how they kick on, then you set yourself up best to be able to bring your own through. And then you don't have to worry about going, looking in the shop window and hoping that you can time the market right, because you're breeding them. That's what we're trying to do, I guess, ultimately, aren't we?
Well, that's what Penrith have done so well. So
exactly right. Yeah. And they're running into a position now where they're losing all their good players. Look at who they've lost with Kikau, Coruscant, Brighton next year. I'm probably forgetting another couple as well. Burton, obviously a big one. Winger, lost Charlie Staines, but they lost another winger, so Taylor May came in. Anyway, yeah. So,
but they gained Tyrone Peachy, so
Garner. Played really well in the New South Wales Cup last week. Scored 2 tries against us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we're rehashing what we did last week. I spoke about last week a little bit, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that we don't really have. See, this time last year, we knew the massive red flags in our squad. Whereas in some ways, there's no paper over cracks. We've improved the squad nearly across the board, but there's not a lot of improvement that can be done at the moment, the next 12 to 18 months based upon the market. Would you agree?
100%.
So the best thing they can do, as we said, is front load, invest in youth, and then look to take the current squad that they've got as far as they can. And we don't know where that is. So for me, there's based upon the start of the year and how far behind the 8 ball their results have put us, I say no. But if you ask me if Brandon Wakeham and Luke Brooks are good enough to take this side into the 8, if we had a couple extra wins under our belt at this stage, as in the ladder at the moment wasn't a problem, I say they are. I don't say they're good enough to take us top 4 or threaten for a premiership, but I say Brooks and Wakeham as halves can do the job with the side that we've got to get us there. So we don't know what that limit is in terms of what we've currently got. So I guess that's what we fish around for the next 12 to 18 is go, how the coaches, how do we maximize what we've currently got and what is the limit of this current squad? Because we're only just really starting to scratch the surface of what they can do, and we saw on the weekend.
Could not have said it better myself, and you spent 30 minutes doing it, so I'm not going to try.
Yeah, sorry, waffling on as usual. Mate, no game this weekend, but the Origin list were released yesterday. Just very quickly, we'll probably next week, I would dare say, mate, we've spent a bit of time talking about an Origin preview heading into that, and then maybe a game off the back of it. You and I both mad rugby league fans growing out in the heart of New South Wales, North Coast at Coffs Harbour there, so we bleed blue. It's an important mark on our calendar, so we'll have a big talk about next week. A couple of surprises in the Blues squad. What did you make of the selected team?
How TPJ got there over other people is beyond me. Don't understand it, but we all know that Freddie likes to smoke the ganja, so maybe he just smoked too much of it.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty obvious that they're looking at bringing some firebrands in and trying to bash Queensland up. That's
Yeah, I don't
what happened
understand.
today.
I don't understand if that's the case. Why not bring a player that's also putting up massive stats in David Clemmer?
Yeah, and has missed one tackle all year.
Yeah,
There's obviously deep-seated issues there with Clemmer, and there's a reason he's got a black mark against his name. But if the selectors were worth their
apparently
salt,
there was a mark against Latrell as well, but they've won that over. So,
well, of course, yeah, TPJ is an interesting one. As all the commentary says, it can go two ways. He could go and blow the game wide apart, or he could make an absolute meal of it and be dropped after the first game, and might have a Sifatello guy in their hands. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Freddie's known for picking one player that was just like, really? And then it just bites him in the ass. So,
someone I think who is, I'm not a big fan of that built for Origin phrase, but if there's a player that I think will actually really thrive in that arena, I actually think Hudson Young.
100%. I knew you were going to say Hudson Young.
Yeah. I really like what I see in him. He's learnt to control his aggression. He's not a gigantic bloke, but he runs hard. Everything's at 100 miles an hour. He hits hard. He runs hard in defence. He's all effort plays, built like a brick shit house, and he's half mad as a cut snake. So,
yeah, who he reminds me of, not obviously the build and not the way he plays, but the way he's managed to control his aggression. And it's another ex-Raiders player who went to Dragons in Michael Wayman. He was a loose cannon when he was at the Raiders, absolutely loose cannon. Would get into blues almost on a weekly basis, and then he went and calmed everything down. Went to the Dragons and won a premiership with them. I think he represented New South Wales as well.
I think Wayman did play for the Blues, yeah.
But yeah, very similar in the fact that he managed to control his aggression and channel it, and that's what Hudson Young's done. So,
and I think that's what they're hoping TPJ has done a little bit this year with his shift to prop and
he's
fixing
still
up some of his.
Doesn't he?
Yeah, and that still doesn't sit well with me because, anyway, I know I don't want to get into that, but yeah, like a few commentators have said, you say things done when you're young. This is 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the other side of the coin is, I could have been 6. I wouldn't have said that.
God no.
So
we would have been taken
to
out
me,
whipped.
Well, to me, it rules you out.
It just shows that you don't have the passion that's needed.
Yeah, if you haven't grown up bleeding for that jersey, mate.
Like
every effort that you put in on that field next Wednesday night is going to be forced. It doesn't come from in here, and that's what Origin is about in my eyes.
Oh, 100%. You perfect example of that is Nico Hines is what, 22, 23? And he said last year, or even this year, maybe, he's like, I hate Queensland.
He's 27.
Nico Hines is 27.
Been around for a long time, yeah. 26, 27, pretty sure he's 27 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. Manly Junior played a bit of football up at Sunny Coast Falcons and then via Melbourne went to Sharks. He's a bit older than you think.
Wow, I did not know that. Either way, who cares? He still sits there at the start and goes, I hate Queensland.
Yeah.
It's inbred. It's ingrained in you. If you have that passion, if you have that drive, if you're not in it for the $100,000 paycheck, you don't say shit like that. You don't.
I can't. It's just the wrong mindset for me, and it speaks to if he was young and he was 11, maybe, but even still,
I'd probably sit there and be like, nah.
Yeah, I remember watching State of Origin as a 5-year-old getting in trouble for swearing, and I never swore at watching the footy with Dad.
Yeah,
and so
I remember getting all psyched up watching Hopewadi take on 4 Queenslanders.
And it's not like it was a demanded selection. It's not like he was Jason Taumalolo form the year he won the Dally M and he's been dominating everybody and he's a must pick. And so we're like, look, maybe we can let it slide. Yeah, it's a left field pick for starters. So yeah, it just I hope he goes out and brains them, but I just don't agree with that precedent that they're setting in that regard. To me, it shows that it's not a high priority or a high passion of his, obviously. And yeah, I I wish I could just wash it away. It just doesn't sit well with me.
No,
And it
I can't
smacks
watch
to
it
me
away
of
at all.
it smacks to me of another arrogant, brandy, and fitless selection. If there's one slight or indictment I've had on them since they've been the co-selectors, basically those two wankers. Can't stand Brandy Alexander.
Yeah, neither can I.
It is the arrogance in some of their selections and their justifications for it. I hate it. The favoritism, the nonsense. You should have an open mind when it comes to that. Billy Slater said it perfectly when he was interviewed last night on 360. He said every person that comes from Queensland that plays first grade football is eligible for Queensland. He said everyone's on the table. And New South Wales aren't like that. Otherwise, David Clemmer would have been one of the first picked. He's been absolutely phenomenal this year. His front row partner, credit to Steph, awesome. I'm stoked that Steph's 19th man. Clemmer has outplayed him every day, ending in Y and twice on Sundays this year. And Steph's been, on the improve and playing some good footy, and so, yeah, anyway, that's my opinion on Brandy and Fittler. Fittler's lost 2 of the last 3 series with undoubtedly probably the best team on paper 3 years in a row. So I hope he gets the sack this year and we pick somebody a little bit more open-minded, maybe like a Craig Fitzgibbon or someone.
I want somebody that's just going to bleed blue. I don't know. For me,
Jason Riles, if he doesn't get the Dragons gig.
Yeah, see, like, it just needs to be somebody that, is for me, I just need another Tommy Raudonikis. Like, Tuvey. How good would that be?
There you go, Jeff Tuvey.
That is a good one.
Hey, he can still coach. Desi Hasler and Jeff Tuvey.
Yeah. I don't know about Desi. Desi's just, unless he breaks a few more doors in a dressing shed, he still needs to get that aggro back.
I just wouldn't be able to listen to his
press conferences.
Conference. Shut up, mate. But yeah,
at least with Tubes, there's going to be an inquiry.
Yeah, which would be good, even if we win.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm going to go this evening and go and get nice and comfy in my bed, maybe with a little treat of some description. Big smile on my face, turn on Leichhardt Oval last Saturday night and watch that game all over again, I reckon. What a way to drift off to sleep this evening.
Oh, mate. That's like I said, that's just how we should go to sleep from now on. Just listening and then listening to just that over and over again, 66-18, 66-18.
Absolutely. Mate, people are already getting tattoos.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. It's a moment we won't forget, and hopefully we're continuing to trend upwards and we see a bit more of that, maybe 67 next week.
Well, we've got the bye, so we won't see it this week, but
we should beat the bye. We gave them a touch up last time. I think we got the number.
Yeah.
No jokes about the bye this time around.
No.
And you know what is interesting? As of yesterday, before NRL 360, I do watch NRL 360. There were 6 episodes before Origin. Not one mention of that Tigers game yesterday. Not one mention of it today. They've got 6 episodes to talk about State of Origin, including next week, which will probably be all State of Origin. Yet they just couldn't bear themselves to spend a couple of minutes to give us a pat on the back for the best performance in the history of the club. Doesn't it just speak to the media bias? They actually patted the Dragons on the back for their win and spoke about them briefly. Nobody wanted to mention the Tigers game.
Look, we all know how I feel about the media. So
nobody is surprised. Media bias out the wazoo. All right, mate. Public service announcement. We might wrap up there. Any final thoughts?
No, I actually thought this would be a very, very quick one, but we ended up going quite some time. So hopefully the listeners enjoyed.
Mate, we could have gone for hours talking about all the positives, eh? Public service announcement. We've got Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you hop on both. Tiger Town Podcast. We'll defer you to the West Tigers Podcast and West Life Podcast. As we say every single week, those blokes do it better than us. Get around them. Spotify is where I listen to them on, but they also have YouTube channels as well. West Life Podcast, West Tigers Podcast. Other than that, mate, we don't have a game to preview this week. We don't have an Origin to preview until next week. So big show next week. We'll have an Origin preview and a game preview where we play Canberra, who, as of this evening, will be without Elliot Whitehead, who's received a 2-match ban for his role in something. I don't know what he did, something anyway, but
Works.
So that'll be interesting to see, mate. Pleasure as always. We got through it. We were able to actually create and construct a podcast based upon a resounding victory. So go us. Long may it continue. This might be the new format.
We're trending.
We are this, mate. This positive format might be the go moving forward. What do you reckon,
mate? If we keep putting in those performances, it's not going to stop.
Oh wait, you can dream about the post grand final win podcast, can't you?
Oh, I thought that was decades away. I think it's possibly months away.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. I thought it was decades away too. Now it's probably maybe 18, 19 years, maybe 2046, something like that. Nah, mate, been a pleasure as always. That's been us boys for Tiger Town podcast today on 23rd of May, 2023. Talking about a resounding victory on Saturday. Thanks for tuning in. As always, Toby, what do you have to say, mate?
Go the Tigers.
Go the mighty West Tigers, 66-18. You beauty.